And now moving from photographs about Johannesburg to a nice tune I really like by a young artist, American artist, but living here, Emma, and his work, Josie. And we're in the studio now with Emma. No, he is not Emma from the novel.
Oh, nice.
But Emma, an exemplar of, a real exemplar of world music. Nibbles and bites and sampling from all kinds of different things. An American musician who's done work now drawing on South African and other African music traditions in his new album, Ownership. And it's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. That was an excellent introduction. Thank you.
No, we try to confuse people completely most of the time. We don't want them to know what's going to happen.
It's nice to get that one, you know.
How did you become interested in music outside of, I don't want to say the norm, but the sort of the more standard
Western
pattern
conventions that I was raised in? Yeah. Well, I always had a penchant for, I won't say that I was iconoclastic, but I always had a penchant for non-conventional sounds and styles of music. And I had people along the way, as I grew up as a musician, who kind of encouraged me.
Like who?
I actually had a professor. I went to school twice. The first time was to study music. The second time was to study anthropology. But when I was studying music,
that's a good combination.
Yeah, it's actually worked well for me, and it also kind of makes sense with my career trajectory. But I had a professor in college, jazz. I was in a classical school,
and this was where?
In Virginia, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And I had one jazz professor, and he noticed that I liked odd meters and odd timing and odd sounds, and he'd say, you need to start listening. First of all, he'd say, you need to start listening to Coltrane and Sonny Rollins. But then he would say, you need to start listening to African music. You need to start listening to...
Go back to the source.
Yeah.
Back to the source.
So he was, this was really, and before I was conscious, it didn't really hit me until much later what kind of influence that had on me. But at a particular point, there's a particular point where South Africa came into it for me, and that was I had developed a real interest in African music in general. Somebody had played one particular artist for me, had given me a compilation CD with a couple of songs from Aaron Mbambo, who was a local Maskanda artist. And I heard this music, and I was like, oh my God, what is this, and where does it come from?
Maskanda's an odd choice in a way for somebody in Northern Virginia in the United States.
Well, but you know what? It actually makes a lot of sense, because I'm not originally from Virginia. My musical upbringing started in Chicago, and Chicago blues, and Maskanda is a very bluesy, there's definitely a connection.
That makes more sense to me.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and I was completely enamored with this music, to the point of wanting to know everything I could possibly learn about it, not just the music, but culturally where it comes from. And, so that kind of started me on the whole trajectory.
I mean, looking at the material that's been written about you, the phrase "world rock" pops up. I mean, world music is something that I tend to get a hold of easily, but world rock. I mean, I thought rock was universal in its first application.
Well, actually, that's an interesting observation, because I agree with that. Well, I mean, I'm first and foremost a rock musician. I was raised in the rock and blues landscape, so that's kind of where, those are still my roots. So as I set out to do...
The gods are Bill Haley and the Comets or something like that.
Well, yeah, but I listen to everybody from John Lennon to Frank Zappa, and but also, you know, Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and people like that as well. So, and everything in between and outside of that, so, which I know is kind of vague, but it's kind of nebulous, I suppose.
And so then but now you're going back and forth between the United States and Africa.
Yeah.
Explain. How do you do?
Hey man, it's not easy. It's a real chore. What happened was,
it's also expensive.
Well, actually, you get creative.
Okay.
I do not have a record company behind me right now. This is an independent project, and I have been building up to this for a number of years. So yes, it's expensive, but you find creative ways to use the trade bank, as we say, and call in markers that you have collected over years. So there's been a bit of that. So so far, it's a daunting task, but it's working. What happened was, when we finished the album, I recorded half of it in my studio in New Jersey, and half of it here in Johannesburg, because I wanted to
incorporate local musicians.
I wanted to include a lot of my friends who I've been working with the South African community both here in Johannesburg and New York for a long, long time. So you know, this is kind of the culmination of many, many years of those relationships. So, but when we finished the album, then it became, well, where am I going to launch the band from? Because you know, in order to take it to the next step, you've got to be playing. And frankly, there were more musicians this side, and I was starting to get a little bit more attention this side with the album. So I decided, okay, let's try and launch the band from here. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Concert tours?
That's the plan. Global domination.
Yeah, the world multinational, global universal corporation.
Yeah, well, you know,
Okay.
I got to be careful with that. Yeah, that's, you know, I'm not trying to just break into a local market. I'm trying to start out here, but the goal is to get to Europe and come back to America and tour globally. I'd like to go to Asia too. I'd like to get. My wife lived in China for a couple of years. I'd love to get into China and and play there. So it's just a fascinating place.
What are you going to do when you grow up?
Dude,
I mean, the list of people who are your influences, or the people who have gone before you in musical terms, it's quite the most extraordinary list of names. Locally and globally. Of all these people, from a list that runs from Busing Plongu to Welcome Msomi to, oh gosh, everybody. Well, pretty much everybody else.
There are a lot of luminaries that have been.
Camille Saint-Saëns is listed here as well, which sort of surprised me, and U2 and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and everybody else.
Music is music, you know.
And Dave Matthews. And Bruce Springsteen too?
Oh, are you kidding me? I'm a Jersey boy.
I was going to say, here we go. See,
although transplanted, but I'm still a Jersey boy now, and if you know, Springsteen is.
For those of you not familiar with this, Bruce Springsteen is the archetypal New Jersey rocker.
Oh my God, yes.
And Emma and I share something in common, which we only just discovered. We're both from the same state.
We're both Jersey boys. And neither of us talk like it.
That's true. I don't say these guys at all.
We don't have we don't quite have the accent. But.
Who is the single most important musical influence on you?
Oh man. I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know if that's possible.
You have 10 seconds.
Okay. His name is Herb Smith. He was my professor in college. Okay. I would have to say Herb Smith was the guy. He's the man
who set you on the road.
Yeah, yeah. And he doesn't even know it, I'm sure.
And Emma doesn't tell us his full name. Emma just calls himself Emma.
Well, as I say, that would ruin the mystique of it.
And the album is Ownership, and we'll play a cut from that just after this.
Good. Thank you.